Hello, my friends. Welcome. 1st of July here in New Zealand. Well, another month ticked off. It's 2020 still. And this is Chat with Matt. Half an hour or so to shoot the breeze about whatever's going on for you. I am just attempting to, with this new Facebook, what do we call that thing? Application, I guess, on desktop. Just trying to work my way to the right place so I can see if anyone wrote in anything ahead of time. There I am, so I'm on, which is good news. And here's this. Bird talk. That's the only conversation I've got to start, bird talk. I don't know how much I can talk about that, Sister Denise. Talking to my friend Jumpy the Tui that we hand raised. That was the little poster I put up. Your purpose is just to be yourself. It's a great place to start. I can talk a little bit about purpose while I wait for some people to jump on. That wouldn't hurt. And here I am on live, which I won't look at, but I will look at where the comments are scrolling through so that if I miss them on here, which I quite often do, I can see them on there. Hey, Sister Mary. I am free as a bird, so to speak, to talk about whatever's going on. Could talk a little bit about purpose. I could talk a little bit about what's coming up for us. We got an eclipse, another one with the full moon coming up on, it'll be Sunday afternoon, my time, 4:44, which is always good, right? 4:44. Will be the new moon, full moon lunar eclipse. It's only a however you're supposed to say that word, a very partial lunar eclipse, but nonetheless, it's it's reasonably good alignment, and it's I think it's the 7th or the 8th eclipse in the last 2 years in this cycle of Capricorn Cancer eclipse. Eclipses always happen on an axis, so that's not unusual for always 180 degrees apart, because one's where the sun is, one is the moon is. That's just how it works. What am I about to say? But this has been very influential in what's currently going on, or at least very timely with what's going on, because Capricorn's all about rules and structure and and Cancer's all about self and family and safety and feelings. So it's been a great little adjunct to this falling apart of societal structures of authority that have been, ruling the roost for so long, and, has held its place in promising security for us all, but we're now seeing that it's not. It's not delivering the security that we want. And so people are having to step out of the assumed safety that comes in just following the rules and staying part of society, to basically take authority and sovereignty of themselves, and to take those, make their choices from that space of sovereignty and authentic confidence and responsibility, right, for our own freedom and our own safety. And it's not a trade-off that we're prepared to make anymore. We're not prepared to sacrifice our freedom in order to have perceived safety and security, because it's just not fulfilling our soul. So that has to change, and it is changing. Exactly. There was never really security from the outside. It was just something that we've been sold into, believing that that's the case, and therefore, making decisions to sacrifice various parts of our external freedom in order to maintain these structures that never really delivered the security that we truly desire and deserve, for that matter. So, so that's happening, right? That's happening. So we're going to be offering a call at that time. Those of you who, like Mary, who are in the Mantara Transformation Empowerment Support community, we're going to be talking that morning, because our first weekend of July, we're going to be talking about regeneration we're moving into in July, which is an interesting topic. We've been working through these topics such as, what we value, our morals, and how those have been formed, and then how we advocate for our future, and for society and for ourselves, through May and June. And now we're moving into regeneration, which is really a quantum step into a new generation, not bypassing or overcoming this idea of healing or repair is just getting back to what we had, right? This idea of when are we going back to normal with our societal conditions? And the truth is we are just not going back to what we once called normal. We're moving on. We're superseding that. And so this topic of regeneration is all about how we do that on all levels in our life, how we get out of this mentality of just wanting to regain what we once had and to actually set our goalposts a lot higher than that. We're having much better than what we've ever had before, right? So it's not just about healing and repairing what we once had, getting back to where we once were. It's about regenerating ourselves into a new expression of, a new expansive expression of the truth of who we've always been, beneath the flesh suit and the psyche and the whatever mentality of a personality, right? I guess that was the point of the big dissolution. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what dissolution you're talking about. There's been a lot of dissolutions lately, but yeah, the point of, we've really had to come to understand that the external world is very illusory, and it is very, very disillusioning, right? Isn't the so-called normal just being our authentic self? Oh, I don't think that's what most people call normal, Mary. I don't think many people on this planet would call that normal at all. Most people call normal, well, in statistics, what normal is a section of the curve in the middle of the bell, right? The normal is basically like the mean or the average, but slightly different. And I'm not right up on my statistics anymore. It's been a good 30 years since I've been there. So basically normal is in with the crowd, in with the flock, what most people are doing and what most people expect to keep happening. That's normal. So normal is basically built around an expectation that history has delivered. So history keeps recreating normal as we move forward, because people look back and say, well, this is what normally happens, and so this is what should normally happen moving forward. The dissolution that they were helping us, that our structures were there to support us and was a way of effectively governing and maintaining our societies, right? It makes sense. Let's make a healthcare system that delivers healthcare to all. Let's make an education system that delivers a fair education to all. Let's create a financial system that makes money and everything easy. But the problem is, with creating these systems, we also, especially in the time that it happened, right, when dark influence had a very, very good advantage on this planet, they were able to basically take control of all of these systemized deliveries and manipulate it to their advantage, right? So that people stay in this, coming back to this idea of normal, people are educated into what to expect. And then if anything's other than that, they get upset, right? As things start to improve, they get upset, because humans are creatures of habit, and our ego loves the idea of predictability and stability in that quote-unquote normal. And as Sharon just said, everyone's normal is a little bit different, but there's a societal normal, and every society is slightly different, of course. There's a societal normal that is basically just the average of individuals' normals. And so that's what we see, perpetuating, and that's what people keep comparing against. Oh, they're not normal, right? And so that's just someone making a judgmental comparison based on their perception of what most people are doing and what that person is doing, right? And if that person is not conforming to the normal, the average of what everyone else does, then they're labeled as weird or an outsider or whatever. And so that's just the process of evolution, really. That people have to break out of normal so that we can reset normal, so that we can reset it. People definitely get used to being in that normal box, and they find comfort. They find egoic comfort in being in the normal box, because in the normal box you fit in with everyone else, and you can't so easily be singled out. And people don't want to be singled out, because in the past, people like you and me, Mary, and everyone else on this call, no doubt, have been singled out and persecuted. Right? So singling out, being identified as out of normal range, has been dangerous in the past. And so we're here, our ego especially is here to avoid dangerous situations. We're here to avoid getting hurt again. We're here to avoid being persecuted. And, so lying outside of normal takes a lot of courage, And that's what many of us are having to employ as we choose to step into our expansive version of self, which is outside of normal, societal normal. Then that requires us to be seen as different, and that's feels scary. That feels scary for people like you and me, especially. Some people revel in it because some souls haven't had the same experiences of being quite so persecuted as being outside of normal. Right? They didn't get burnt at the stake. They didn't get humiliated in front of the whole village or whatever. So And the thing is with this persecution energy, Mary, is when we step out of normal, it arises to be released. It arises to be released because it gets triggered. And then it gets triggered, and then it arises to release. And then when it's on the surface of our field and we're dealing with it and we're now scared of getting persecuted, guess what happens? Right? It attracts a persecution experience. So we tend to get singled out and persecuted as we are releasing persecution, which was much harsher in the past, but nonetheless, it comes back to it's not that we're being punished or tested by the universe, it's just natural energy mechanics. As it comes up to be released, it attracts situations that resonate with it. So as we're releasing persecution energies, we tend to have experiences of being persecuted, especially through our perception, right? Because our perception is already on high alert for being persecuted, because that's what we're feeling inside of ourselves. We're almost expecting it, and thus we see it. And even if the person who's come into our life doesn't really mean to persecute us, we take it as a persecution experience, right? So it's insidious, and then we're still at choice all the way through this, is whether we take this new experience of being persecuted as a reason why we should pull our heads back in and go back into quote unquote hiding in the normal, or whether we galvanize ourselves and stay true to our hearts and keep being our expansive self, and trust that over time we're going to erode away this persecution energy, and we're going to find a deeper sense of confidence in ourselves. We're choosing it at first, but we're feeling the opposite at first. And while we're feeling the opposite, we quite often experience the opposite. But over time, as we choose to ignore what we're experiencing and what we're feeling, and just keep going with what we know to be true for ourselves, and standing true in our authentic beingness, then we tend to find we erode away all of that resistance, and we come into our own, where we start experiencing the reflection of what we're being rather than what we are releasing. And then we've, basically acclimated to a new state of being. We've gone through a process of transformation, and yet over time we will choose to step again higher than that. It's a process of ongoing evolution, as it always shall be. It's a process of ongoing evolution. So, just to let you know, Marie's got people coming this morning. So there'll be people coming and going, not through this room generally, but a little bit of noise out there. And I'll probably get a bit distracted, trying not to. So what's next, my friends? Here we go. What has Mary written in? I find myself doing it to myself when I feel that there is something wrong with myself. Exactly. And so the feeling that something is wrong with yourself is not awareness that there is something wrong with yourself. It's the feeling of what's coming up to be released, which is basically the reflection of, or the residues of, experiences you've had in the past, where you've basically been programmed or indoctrinated or implanted with the belief that there is something wrong with you, right? Based on the fact that you were outside of normal. You chose to show up as a being of light when everyone else was keeping their heads down, or reveling in, for that matter, the dark agenda that was running, and the power plays that were happening, and the structures of abusive power that were happening. So that's been happening on this planet for quite a few thousand years now, and some people have, just allowed themselves to go with that, and there's nothing wrong with that. It was their education and their souls growing up, and, all sorts of good outcomes from all sorts of experiences. But those of us who have been very dedicated to the light have chosen to turn up and buck the system, right? We've been, heretics, mavericks, witches, whatever you want to call us. We've shown up and not kowtowed down to the dark authoritarian rule, and as a result, we have been persecuted. I don't want to hold on to this crap anymore. Yeah, so don't. So don't hold on to it anymore. That's exactly right, Sister Mary. And it's just a choice now to basically let yourself go through the process. We can't just push it away. We can't just get rid of the experience of what we're releasing. We have to go through it. So it's a matter of going through it with a what's the right word? A mature attitude, so that we've got this aspect of allowance for a process, but we've also got this strong identification with where we're going. Identification with where we're going. So, I'll look at the time, 9:18. We've still got good 10 minutes, good 12 minutes. What else, my friends? Just fall into the point is, Mary, is not to fight it, right? Because fighting it and judging yourself is not going to get you over the line, right? It's not. You can't push this stuff away. You have to understand that not holding on to something is not a process of having to throw it away or get rid of it. It's just a process of relaxing and allowing your hand to open so that you're no longer holding it. It doesn't mean that you won't experience it, but you won't hold it. There's a difference. So you'll experience it for a while as it goes through the natural ramifications or the natural process of release. But if you're not fighting it and you're not holding on to it, then you're just experiencing it from a space of mature awareness, then you are going to overcome it, right? Relaxation is very, very key in this process. Relaxation is very, very key in this process. Relaxation, again, is not doing nothing. It's not lying in a hammock resting. It is choosing not to get stressed and to maintain allowance and trust that this process is working for you and for all of us. It's working for us. We don't need to mentally micromanage this process. We don't need to keep measuring ourselves. We don't need to keep proving that we're doing it right. Howdy, Gary. There seems to be a part of me wanting to keep it for some reason, perhaps for safety. Yeah, you could call it safety, but yeah, there's a part of you there's a part of everyone that's resistant to change, Mary, and there's part of you that doesn't want to go first, right? But unfortunately, that's the space you're in. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you want to think about it. You're a mature being on this planet, and so going first is your role. In your particular little area, that's what you're doing. That's what you've been called on. And so it's, you can call it habits, and you could call it, comfort, right? It's comfortable to stay with your old habits. It's comfortable to stay with your, head pulled in and in your own, yes, we call it safety, right? Habits feel safe, routine feels safe, predictability feels safe, and it's time to step out of that, right? Because you're tired of what's predictable, right? It's predictable that you're going to keep going down the same rabbit holes in the same patterns, and you don't want to keep doing that. So you're making choice that you don't want to do that, which then means you have to make choice to consistently step out of your habits and what feels predictable into a new way of being, which is unpredictable and therefore a little bit concerning for your ego. And it will be a bit messy, right? It will be a bit messy. You'll have failure experiences where you choose not to get overly pushed around by these old energies, and then it will happen, right? That you do get more pushed around than you would like. And so you don't like that, right? It feels like a failure. You hold intentions to stay strong in your own confidence, and then you get eroded and overcome by your fears and your guilts and your griefs. It feels like a failure, but it's actually part of the process of making transformation. So we have to we have to do this, right? Yeah, the subconscious narratives, as Gary just pointed out, you've got to dig it out. And digging it out is basically just becoming aware of it and then let it go, which just basically means relaxing into the intentions that you're holding to be a different way, despite the fact that you recognize that your subconscious narrative is influencing you. It is always going to influence you to a degree, and it's just a matter of slowly moving that scale on to what degree you allow your subconscious narrative to run the show or influence you, right? For quite many people on this planet, it's completely running the show. For others of us, it's not running the show anymore, but it's still influencing us. It's still creating resistance when we want to step forward. Like I've been meaning to step forward into something for several days now, but my subconscious narrative is creating these uneasy feelings that's preventing me from actually pulling the trigger and doing it. Even though I really want to do it, I just can't find the courage right now. That's the truth. I can't find the courage right now to step past the fears that I'm feeling and the discomfort that I'm feeling and the resistance that I'm feeling. And I'm making all sorts of mental excuses why I don't have time to do that right now. This is more important, right? Reprioritizing things when I know damn well in my heart that this thing is the priority, because I have so much resistance to it, first and foremost, right? If I've got so much resistance to something, then I know it's a valid thing to be doing, right? Because I'm all about stepping out of my resistance. I'm all about choosing to be sovereign in myself and an ability to choose in a free and expansive and empowered way to do what I know I feel to do. So if I feel resistance to doing something and then that resistance starts stopping me from doing it, I know that I need to step past that, but it ain't easy. It ain't easy, and it does influence us, and it might take some time to basically just to fall into enough pain and discomfort around this whole issue that we choose to find the courage to do it, right? So the pain and the discomfort is not a wrongness, it's actually the motivation to step into doing something that we are quote unquote scared of doing or resistant to doing for whatever reason. So that's the point, my friends, is to embrace this discomfort and to step through it. Sorry, I don't actually keep up with it all, Gary. So some of this is new news to me. So Gary's written in, what's your view regarding these series of traumas experienced in New Zealand: earthquakes, volcanoes, shootings, and now the virus? Oh, I see. So you're talking over a long period of time. The earthquake, as in like Christchurch, and then down south on the Kaikoura coast, the volcano up north, shootings, and now the virus. Kind of nationwide catharsis that we can use to go deep into our old narratives, especially our persecution complex. Yeah, I don't think New Zealand's any different to anywhere else in the world, Gary, with that happening. I think the society in general is experiencing a series of traumas, as we're getting the opportunity to basically, the external world is always a mirror of our internal world, and the collective internal world right now is in purification. And so a lot of this stuff is coming to the surface to give us an opportunity to move through it, right? They're triggering experiences, but they're also, as you pointed out, they're releasing experiences. It's a cathartic experience that then triggers us more into it and triggers others into it who haven't quite recognized it in themselves yet. So it's all working for us. The external world always works for us. The external world is working to serve us. It's not against us. And I know it seems like... Sorry, I just had a little moment of dropout there. The external world can seem like something that we're battling against, but really the external world is just mirrors, and it's always working for us. Mirrors always serve us. Even if we don't like what we're seeing in the mirror, it serves us to find recognition for what is truly going on. And if we want to know what's going on in the majority of what's for all of us internally, then look no further than the external world and what's playing out, right? And how the media is portraying it and how people are reacting and responding to the media and all of that stuff. So, yeah, Mary Reddy, now 4th of July is supposed to have a lot of stuff happening. That's because, it's coming with a full moon and a lunar eclipse, and the end of this whole 2-year cycle of eclipses happening in the Capricorn Cancer thing, and the whole safety versus authority stuff. So, and some other astrology, planets in retrograde, planets squaring off, all that shit. I put my hand up, so I don't know that much about astrology, but I do know that there's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening, and the second half of this year is not going to be it's not going to be a day at the beach. There's a lot of opportunity for some big growth to occur. And so hang on to your hats, right? It's an opportunity for some great growth for us all as individuals and for society in general. Yeah, it's not going to be pretty. It's going to get real messy, but that's where the gold happens, right? Gold, you don't find the gold just sitting on the surface, right? You've got to dig into it. You've got to get muddy. You've got to use water. You've got to use pressure. You've got to do a lot of stuff to get gold. And so nothing is supposed to be easy in that regard. So, or pretty. So embrace the not prettiness of it all, and allow ourselves to go through this process. The buttons are getting pushed, and we're all growing. I think the key question is, how do we interpret the external events in relation to our own inner work? Well, we just interpret it as a reflection. So the point is not to need to overly interpret it. It's not to need to understand it all. It's about just interpreting it as a reflection and as a help, right? If we, what I've always found works well for me is to interpret anything that's happening externally as a help, right? First and foremost, because if we choose to experience it or think of it as a hindrance, then we're going to contract. If we see it as a challenge that we need to overcome, then we're going to contract. But if we see it as an opportunity to help us expand into our expansive expression, then that's exactly what it will be as well. So it's a mirror, but it's a helpful mirror. And I know looking in the mirror can quite often be painful, right? We don't want to look into the mirror. We don't want to see the truth of ourselves when we're feeling ugly. When we're feeling unwell, looking in the mirror is not a particularly pleasant thing to do, but at the same time, it's beneficial to recognize and accept that we're not well at the moment, right? Therefore, we need to take care of ourselves. We need to nurture ourselves. We need to drink some lemon and honey. We need to rest more, whatever it needs to do. We need to recognize when we're not well so that we take proper not precautions, but we take proper actions, right, to support ourselves through the process of what we are releasing, which is what generally the not well situation is, right? If we've got a cold or a virus is starting to flourish in us, or bacteria is taking hold, then it's generally because the conditions inside of ourselves are conducive for that. And it's no point blaming the bacteria. There's no point blaming the virus. There's no point blaming that I came in contact with someone else who gave it to me. Your conditions were conducive for you to get unwell. So therefore, and you don't need to whip yourself or beat yourself up about that, because making yourself wrong for that isn't going to help. But you do need to take responsibility, right? There's a fine line between victimhood and victory. Exactly, Gary. So we have to accept that we're not well at the moment. We're deep in the process of releasing our stuff, and that is in our field right now, which is making it very conducive for us having unpleasant experiences. Where, as we started off the call, I can't remember when I was talking about it, but what's coming up from within us is going to attract situations that mirror it back to us from the external world. So we're releasing a lot of trauma from inside of ourselves. Therefore, we're having a lot of traumatic experiences outside of ourselves, and they're helping us to fully cathartically release this stuff that's coming up. Our job is to maintain a proper perspective and attitude towards the experience, and not to contract into we're the victim of the outside world and we need to fight the outside world to fix what's happening to us, because no outside world fighting is going to fix the process that we're going through. There's nothing to fix in the process that we're going through. We are basically releasing a lot of our old history that's been holding us back for a long time, so that we can move forward into a much more expansive version of ourselves in the near future, right? In the near future, there's a massive expansion happening that's very, very, very exciting, but we have to go through this process of releasing a lot of density that we cannot take into this new future. It just is too discordant, too out of match with the vibration of what we're choosing for our future. We've chosen this future. Each of us, through our own visioning and imagination, we've chosen this future and we're moving into it. This is not happening to us. This is happening because of us. This new future is unveiling itself. But to get there, we all need to go through societal wide. We need to go through, and individually, we need to go through the process of releasing a lot of our history that hasn't been very pleasant. So this really is our time to go for it. That is exactly right. And that's exactly right as well, Gary. We all carry our own volcanoes, shootings, and earthquakes and viruses within us. There's shootings happen daily inside my energy field. They're shocking, right? They're shocking, but nonetheless, it's part of the process, and none of it's wrong. And I know it's hard from an external egoic point of view when we see things happen in the external world to think, oh, that shouldn't have happened. That's a wrongness. Oh, that victim has had a thing happen that quote unquote shouldn't have happened. But the point is, it did happen, and we can put shouldn't on top of anything and it doesn't really help. It doesn't really help. Yes, it's important that we don't just sit on our laurels and go, oh, well, that was bound to happen. That's just part of the thing, therefore. But, we have to make responsible choices about how we choose to help society evolve through these experiences, but contracting around the wrongness of what happens and fighting it and waving it around and shouting in the streets about how wrong what's going on is happening doesn't actually help us advocate for a new future. We need to become much more aligned with the future that we're holding. And when we shout in the streets about everything that's wrong, we're basically just reinforcing the history that just happened, it's not helping the vibration go in the right direction. So, of course, awareness is important, and bringing awareness to certain topics is important. And there is a place for quote unquote protest and demonstration, but it's overdone. It's overdone in our society, and it has been for a long time. And that is part of a dark agenda to orchestrate that, to keep people buying into what doesn't serve us, right? So we can see there's manipulation happening all the way through this, just as we see there's manipulation happening all the way through us internally, our own ego, our own inner guru, if you like, our own dark being that sits the authoritarian power within us, which is basically our guru, our ego. And I'm not making our ego terribly wrong, but it's just been programmed, and it just is what it is. But it's got too much power, and it's power hungry and power mad in many ways, is orchestrating many manipulations within ourselves. We're manipulating our own narratives all of the time to suit our agenda, our egoic agenda, to stay safe and secure and predictable, even though that's not really what our heart and our soul desires. Coming to the end of this little discussion, my friends, Gary wrote in, go deep to the very center of your old narrative, feel it, look at it, examine it, pull it apart, dissect it, do whatever you have to do to let go of the identifying yourself as your old narrative. You can choose a new one. Exactly. And the only thing I'll say to that, Gary, is don't get lost in needing to understand it, right? Don't get lost in needing to understand why or how or where or when this old narrative and its place, right? Awareness is key. So be aware that there's an old narrative playing, and be aware of how it influences you and when it tends to influence you and the mechanisms by which it works, so that you are a little bit more on guard about when it's likely to pop up again, and you become more and more sensitive to the awareness of when it is interfering with you, when it's influencing you, so that you can make conscious choice at those moments. But don't get lost in trying to understand it, and certainly don't try and fix it, right? Don't try and logic your way out of your old narrative, because that is a rabbit warren you don't want to get lost in. So see it for what it is, and then just constantly and consistently choose a new narrative on top of that. Not sort of suppress the old narrative, but just saying that old narrative doesn't work for me anymore. Therefore, I am choosing, right, a narrative that serves for me. And you are not alone, Gary. Gary wrote and said, my tripping point, I overanalyze. It's very, very common. We've all been trained into the idea that we stay safe in this world by understanding it. We stay safe in this world by identifying problems and solving them. And it's not the truth, right? We have a beautiful, magnificent, divine, intuitive guidance system in our heart. And if we just relax into that, we will stay much safer and have much better outcomes than trying to do it with our mind. The reason that there's a couple of reasons why we've been caught in our mind. One, we've been programmed to do it. But two, in not so long ago, it was much harder to access the intuitive guidance in our heart because of the energetic lockdown of the whole of the earth, right? The whole of our society, as we've been through a dark phase, as we've moved through a certain part of the cosmos, if you like, where darkness has prevailed and has had the advantage. And as beings of light, we haven't had great access to our own intuitive abilities. And so we've had to rely much more on our smarts, on our mind to stay safe. But we're moving out of that time now. And so it's time to let go of a lot of this over-analysis issue so that we can really allow our heart space to come much more prevalent in our decision-making, in our day-to-day decision-making abilities. You only need to understand something if you are going through it again. Yeah, that's an interesting statement, Michelle. I agree. You only need to understand something if you are going through it again. Yeah, we've used this mental understanding as a way of reacting, basically, because we just set up habits that we go back into, and we recreate history time and time again by doing things that because the only thing that we can mentally understand is something that we've experienced in the past. And so the desire to do things that we understand is basically a desire to keep recreating our old history. So and that's very predictable, and it's very appeasing to our egoic self. So the whole way of getting out of this egoic narrative is to choose to relax into being, inspired into new action, and I know when I talk to a lot of people about, stepping into their most expansive version of themselves and being inspired into new action, they go, yeah, but I don't know how. I don't know how. And of course you don't know how, because you haven't done it before. That's the exact point. This know-how thing, this intellectual driving force, right? This want to know how, which basically means it's predictable then, right? Because you already know how to do it, because you've already done it before. Therefore, you're mentally more sure, your ego's more sure that you're going to have a good outcome, which is what you want, predictable, right? Safe. But there's no joy in that. There's no magic in that. There's no expansion in that, because you're just doing what you've done before. So this whole desire to know how to do it is a desire to stay small and predictable and safe and contained. And it's time to get out of that container, my friends, and into your heart and into expansive actions that are beyond what you know how to do. It's time to step out beyond what you know how to do. There's a have a look at what you mean by understanding, Mary. I know understanding seems to help me change things for me. I'll tell you why. Because when you think that you understand something, you relax, and that allows you to change things. Your job is to relax without needing to understand, right? That's the point. And so inspirational dissatisfaction, that's a good term. Proactive response to discomfort. Yeah. We have to allow ourselves to be dissatisfied with our current situation. I'm dissatisfied with my current situation. That's what's helping me choose to take actions, despite the fact that those actions I'm choosing to take are uncomfortable. They feel scary. They even feel worse than that. So, but yeah, we have to be very willing to be dissatisfied with our current situation, and at the same time maintain a level of happiness around just got a message from my son in his bedroom saying, please bring me some something I feel like I'm going to throw up. And I do need to get off this call because I've got another call coming. So where am I going? It is time to end this call. So, but be aware of that, Sister Mary, that the reason the understanding helps you move forward is because it helps you relax. And your job is to find a new way of relaxing past needing to understand and relaxing into trusting, implicitly trusting, having faith in your intuitive ability, having trust and faith in your own heart, having trust and faith in your own higher self to take the intuitive steps into new, more expansive ways of being, beyond needing to understand it with your mind, which will always be based on what you've experienced before. That's the only way you can really understand things. Oh, you think you understand things that have been explained to you by someone else's experience, which is just then replicating someone else's experience, which is fine if you want to be a follower, but you're here to be more than that. So it's not even about understanding what other people are telling you to do and then doing that. It's not about understanding what you've done in the past and then doing that. It's about stepping beyond all of that and into your own expansive expressions of self. Okay, my friends, much, much love. I know this has gone on a little longer than it should have, was planned to have, expected to. Much, much love. Namaste. Bye for now. Bye-bye.